Welcome to Voices Amped. Thanks for joining us. I'm Ellie Clark.
And I'm Vanessa Becker-Weig, and we are your hosts. Voices Amped is a place for us to share space and lift the voices of artists, activists, community leaders, and organizers, all of whom have inspired us and our work.
For any ampers who aren't familiar with our work, we are Voices Amplified, formerly known as the Girl Project. You can learn more about our arts advocacy work or support us by going to voicesamplified.net. Thanks for listening, and remember, be curious, be courageous,
take up space, and make some noise.
On this week's podcast, we have to give a huge shout out to our sustainability sponsors at $450 plus annually, Tori Lantrip, Tony Del Grosso, and Jill Gookin. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Woo. Welcome and thanks for listening. This is Voices Amped. I'm Vanessa Becker-Weig.
And I'm Ellie Clark, and we are your hosts.
It is a great honor to introduce to you today our friend Jessica Greene.
Woo-hoo! Hi. So happy to be here.
Jessica is an educator, music director, performer, arts and social justice advocate, and the most impressive list maker that I have ever met.
Coming from Vanessa, that's like a big deal because she is a list maker too.
That makes me feel really happy about life.
So true. Jessica holds a bachelor's degree in vocal music education from Berea College and a master's in choral conducting from Eastern Kentucky University. She completed her education leadership certification at the University of Kentucky. Jessica's years in public education have included being a director of choral activities, district arts coordinator, vice principal, and she has led the charge in opening several schools. She is currently the administrative dean at the new K-8 Rise STEM Academy for Girls in Lexington.
Yes.
Woo! They are focusing on breaking barriers for minority girls in STEM fields. Jessica is the Associate Artistic Director and current board president of Distilled Theater Company, where she also serves as music director for the Essential Series and Concert Series productions. She serves on the Studio Players Board of Directors as an advisory member, in addition to producing and music direction. Jessica has worked as a guest artist with numerous other Central Kentucky theaters and universities. She's married to her biggest supporter, Steve, and mother to the adorable miracle baby, Lucas, who is just as dramatic as she is. Her words, not mine.
This is true. This is true.
She is a Gemini. And as Ellie knows, fellow Gemini, that Geminis are some of my favorite people. Geminis examine all sides, are adaptable, intelligent, and curious. I'm a big fan of astrology, so I had to figure that out, Jessica.
I love it.
She's also recently took on the role of the manager of the Teach Team. Theater for Equity, Accessibility, Community, and Healing. She was recently featured in Southern Theater Magazine to speak about Teach's work. You can follow Jessica at Artist in Gratitude. That's ArtistIntegratEdu on Instagram and Facebook, and learn all about her and her adorable child.
Let's fix this.
Yeah, so
let's fix it. It's
Arts Integrated You.
Oh,
it's hard to read.
It is Arts Integrated You. Oh my goodness! Thanks, Ellie, for calling that out. That's good. Wow, that's a lot. I got through a lot. Thanks for fixing that for me, Ellie. I just kept on reading. How do you manage all of that?
Well, it's the whole arts integration piece.
Yeah.
Whew, that's a whole lot. Is there anything that we missed?
No, that was good.
Great. We want to thank you for being our guest on Voices Amped. I think I'm pretty sure the first time that we met was Hairspray.
I think
Yes,
so, yes.
I think so. And you made me cry every night singing I Know Where I've Been. Such a special show for me. And I was so grateful that you were able to do that role, and it just every night brought down the house. So that's how I got to know Miss Jessica.
Yeah, that show was definitely a highlight. I loved it.
And didn't we come to Jessamine County for the Girl Project? I think that was before Hairspray. We just didn't know each other as well. But you were this incredible music teacher, and we came to your classroom to talk to the girls, I think. Yeah.
Yes, I put Whitaker in a room with my boys, and then I put the girls in a room with you all. And so they were both groups were like, we got to hang out with the coolest people. I was like, yeah, you did.
So sweet.
Right. Okay. Yes, yes, yes. I remember. Thank you for that memory, Ellie. You're just saving me all over the place. Thank you.
Oh, please.
Now, though, I have had the true pleasure to really get to know you better through some deep work that we are doing together with Teach. So I'm super excited to start our conversation today with talking about that work. And if you want to repeat for us, Jessica, what Teach stands for and how Teach was conceptualized.
Absolutely. So TEACH stands for Theater for Equity, Accountability, Community, and Healing. So each letter of TEACH has a very strong representation of an area that needs focus. Starting with theater and all the things that need to be built within that community. And so TEACH kind of got its start when one of our members, April Schultz, right in the height of the Black Lives Matters movement this summer, was really taking front stage of what was going on in the world. She just put a message in one of the theater Facebook groups and said, does anyone want to get together and see how we can make some change in our own theater communities? And hundreds of people were like, yes, I'm in. Bring me to it. Let's do it. And then some time passed, and I think an initial meeting was set up just to start talking about what was needed to even start that catalyst. And as it went through, it kind of whittled down to this group of people who were like, look at this research and look at this research, and I found this and I found this, and it kind of morphed into what Teach is today. And we developed the mission and vision statement together as a team. We had some tough conversations and personal searching as individuals, and I'm loving every minute of it. We are still in the midst of those tough conversations and evaluating decisions that we've already made and how the world has changed since then. And I just really appreciate being able to work with such a great team. Vanessa is included in that, and it's hard work, it's worthy work, and it's great.
I was going to say, I know that I was trying to think through the people I know who are involved. So Jessica, it's you and West with Distilled Theater Company, Bob Singleton with Studio Players, Vanessa with the Girl Project Voices Amplified, I'll say. And who else? What other theaters in Lexington? It's predominantly like theaters and educators. Oh, and Tiffany with the Children's Theater. Who else?
Jeremy Kisling with the Children's Theater, Navy Dixon, who is also with Distilled and has worked with a lot of different theaters in the area, and then April Schultz, who does a lot of theater in the Richmond area and in Lexington.
Yes, so that
Cool.
is our Teach kind of leadership team.
Yeah.
And as we're moving forward, we're working towards, getting more people involved, which is really exciting. Why, this is a loaded question, I'm sure. Why did you feel compelled to get involved?
Very, very loaded question, but a really good one. So as a woman of color in the Central Kentucky theater community, I am often the only one unless a show is telling a story about Black people or people that look like me. So I had become accustomed to being the only one. I'd also become accustomed to people not believing I was the president of an organization or on a board or the music director for a production, because it just wasn't common for a Black woman to be in those positions unless it was a show about Black people. And so my own personal feelings going into joining this initiative before it even became Teach was a little standoffish, because oftentimes when the work needs to be done, people wait and look for the people of color to lead that and to educate. And so I purposefully took kind of a back seat and said, I'm interested in this, but I want to see who's going to take the lead. And every member of the team that is with us now really took the lead, and I could see they were doing that individual work and not just saying, well, Jessica, what does that mean? And Jessica, what does that feel like? It wasn't Jessica's going to fix the problems and we're going to then carry it through. It was, we are going to do the research, we are going to do the work. And at that point I said, yeah, this is a group that I can work with, and I can commit to that. And it's been such a relief to not be the person who has to do all of the work, as far as the racial indifferences. And here's my experience. Now I offer those things, but it's not expected from me.
What would you say are the goals of Teach currently, and how do you feel like any of those goals have altered as we've kind of moved along? Because
Yeah.
I think we started I think our first few meetings were over the late summer,
Mm-hmm.
maybe. And so it's evolved
Yeah,
a
so
bit.
we're almost a year. Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
almost a year old. We'll have a birthday party of some sort, maybe. We'll see. But I think the first goal, and the way the name came about, Teach, it's not just an acronym, but it means not just expecting us to teach everyone. Everyone's going to be learning in that process and educating themselves. So that's, I think, the first goal is to provide resources for people to educate themselves on the issues. And also to bring awareness to the issues. Because again, if you are not in an environment that is surrounded by diversity, you might not know the issues. To you, the issue might just be, we don't have any people of color on our board or in our audience or on our stage, but why? So offering those resources so that you can do that work, and then start to make those changes. So that the next goal is, what are the changes and how do you even get to them? So our first meeting, because the group started based on, kind of Black Lives Matters movement, was focused on the plight of Black artists in Central Kentucky. And so we had a panel discussion concerning those insights. And I think a lot of eyes were opened at that point. And then our second one was a little deeper work, breaking the board, because change starts at the top. So just really going for the top and talking about your board, the people who make the decisions, the people who represent your organization. And that conversation was a really great panel and another eye opener. And then the next step is to do the work. And we're going to be preparing our next event that allows boards to really get in there and do the work and have a very clear action plan.
From those two panel discussions, we've all talked about it, but the more we think we know, the more we know we have a lot to learn. So I definitely walked away from both of those with so much insight. Is there anything specific that comes to mind immediately for you that you walked away from? What were your takeaways from those panel discussions?
Oh man. I think the first one was this overwhelming feeling of not being alone. Because again, there are so many times where I walk on a stage and I'm the only person of color, or walk into a room and I'm the only person of color. So just being able to amplify those other voices and those experiences, and allow that to become not a single story, but a bigger message of why the change is needed. I think that was my big takeaway from the first one. From the second one, I'm still processing, because it was a few weeks ago, and I like to meditate on things and really take it to heart. And I think every day when I think about it, something new comes up, or I was reading through the transcript of the chat box from that Zoom panel discussion, and just the insight from the audience. And some of the names I knew, some of the names I didn't know, and just realizing how far Teach can actually go, and how far it can actually reach. I think that's my big takeaway from the second one. And that's inspiring. and overwhelming. And I had a mentor who used to say, if the idea scares you, you're on the right path. And the idea scares me of how far Teach can really reach. And it's inspiring in a scary way.
I have a question. Can you all just tell us who were sitting on those boards? Like, was it artists from all different areas who were talking about their experiences? Can you give us an idea of who was leading in those discussions?
Definitely. So the first panel discussion, the facilitator, and we were very, very specific as a Teach leadership team to not be leading the conversation, because the other part of this is we are learning along with our audience from those same panelists. So it was led by Hassan Davis, who is a local author, performer, fellow Berea College graduate, and he facilitated everything. So once we introduced him, the team turned off their cameras and became part of the audience to learn right along. And then the panelists on that discussion, Navy Dixon and Cole Campbell were panelists on the first one, as well as Peggy Stamps, who is a local producer, but also she is based out of New York. So she does a lot of booking of artists of color for TV, film, stage, a lot of different things. Who else did we have on that first panel?
Tony Harden.
Tony Harden from UK. That's
UK.
Right. Yeah.
We're testing our memories here.
Yeah, I know.
Was Kim Dixon with
Kim
the Breaking?
Dixon was on this most recent one.
Breaking
So
the Board.
Breaking the Board panel was not just focused on the Black experience. And so we were able to pull in other people of color, different identifying factors there. So Kim Dixon represented she used to be a board member for what was KCT back in the day. And we had Chelsea Russell, who is a college student who is working towards joining a board. We had Jordan Lewis, who is newly added to the Lead Center for the Arts board, and has done a lot of work for a lot of different theaters, and he's really passionate about arts education for minority students. And then we also had Melissa Crutcher, who was my maid of honor. That's my girl. And she's been on boards for studio players and working around the Central Kentucky area for a long time. And then who else did we have? There's one more panelist.
From the Lexington Children's Theater Board.
Yes, Dominique.
Dominique, right.
Yes. And man, Dominique is a force to be reckoned with, and I want to be her best friend. And I'm working on it. I'm steadily working on it. And the facilitator for that, Vanessa, brought to us into our world another person I would like to be BFFs with. Shamara was our, and her last name is
Kwachi.
Yeah.
I didn't want to mispronounce her name. Yeah, so Dr. Shamara Kwachi, she was phenomenal. Like the passion that she brought to the conversation, it immediately made our panelists feel like, okay, I'll bare my soul. Here's everything I feel, everything I need to say, and it was lovely.
And she's a Voices Amped guest. Vanessa, I am jumping in, just stealing this because you're part of Teach. I'm sorry. One other question for everybody listening. Have you all created like a vault of these interviews where they recorded? Like, can our listeners go back in history and listen to these, or is that something for the future?
So that is something for the future. And this was a discussion we had as a team in creating brave spaces for our panelists, knowing how vulnerable they were going to be and not knowing how the community would accept this new idea of talking about tough things. So we chose not to record the first two in order to allow our panelists to really feel like they could have open conversations. But we are looking in the future to record those and make them available. But we have fact sheets that we're working on of key quotes that were said from it, takeaways and things like that can be shared as a resource.
Nice.
Well, speaking of that future vision, what do you see? You talk about, kind of being scared of the reach of Teach, and Ellie and I can relate to just that fear of like, are things going to just blow up? I mean, what's going to happen here? But what do you see, pie in the sky? What do you envision for Teach?
Yeah. So we're starting with the Central Kentucky community. I see that moving into the collegiate world where we are training the next arts educators who can then affect change when they're teaching the younger generation. I see that going into high school programs as part of a resource for high school drama teachers and things of that nature as they're picking shows, as they are in the communities that might not look like them. I see that becoming a summer camp opportunity to involve more children of color who might not be able to afford going to a theater camp and may not have the opportunity to train before those college fees to even go audition and fly across country to get into a program are a barrier for them. I see it making change in ways that people usually don't talk about.
Love that. Love that. I'm
Yeah.
I'm on board.
Yes.
So I mean, we've talked about this a little bit, and I would love for our ampers to just know more about Distilled, because I Distilled Theater, which you and Wes Nelson, from what I understand, after KCT, you all moved on and decided to form Distilled, and there's a definite conscious effort to diversify the board and the company in general, and you've really you all have really kind of been ahead of the curve on that, I think, in this area. So what are some of the steps that you all, as you were forming all of that and moving forward, what were some of the steps that you all took?
Yeah. So we started really, excuse me, by asking some questions to some of the artists who continued to come back to us as we were still under the name KCT, and looking at the shows that brought in a diverse audience. So when we did the production of The Wiz for a Summerfest production, we saw an audience that reflected every area of Lexington. And it was the first time that we always stand on that stage and do the welcome and let's take a selfie with the audience. And when we were looking at that picture, it looked so different. Now, we did something with The Wiz that some would say was controversial, as we did have non-people of color in the production of The Wiz, which is normally an all-Black cast. And so part of the feelings that we had were, if a white person can still push the story forward, and we were very conscious of what positions they were in, it was anyone who was it was white in the production was somebody who was telling a Black character that they couldn't do something. So it continued to tell that story and drive that narrative. So what happened was the audience was literally from every corner of Lexington. And starting there with, if this is a production that allows everyone to feel like they can come see it and learn something from it, what can we do to continue doing productions that allow everyone to see themselves on stage, that allow actors of color to say, yeah, I can audition to be Belle in Beauty and the Beast, and I can rock out that role. Yeah, Belle doesn't really look like that. Well, Belle is a cartoon, so it's okay for Belle to be Black. That's fine. But just looking at how to make sure that we are not using it as tokenism, or let's have a Black Sweeney Todd just so we can do it, but saying, what does the character need? And that's how we kind of got down to the distilled elements. Let's distill everything down. Let's take away the pomp and circumstance and get to the heart of a production. What do we absolutely have to tell this story? What are the basic elements? And that character was a huge part of it. And so when we're preparing for a production, we really do some character analysis as a production team, and we strip it away from anything that doesn't, progress the story. So if the color doesn't matter for the character, we just talk about elements that make the character believable. So if they need to be a strong-willed person, if they need to have whatever that might be. And then we go into the auditions with those characteristics and not an image in our mind. And we're able to play around with, how they relate to each other. And we always go back to the script before we cast it and say, let's double check. Does this need to be a person of color? Does this need to be a woman? And if it doesn't, we go back to our list of characteristics. And then we do the same thing with the set design and the environment. If the environment needs to feel differently for it to really portray what the audience feels when they walk in, we'll look for a different location and we'll figure out how to build a stage in that location. And Danny Bowling will figure out how to light it, and John Mark Vanderpool will figure out how to make us sound amazing. And so that's kind of what Distilled came into. That's the long story.
That's great and informative. That's really good stuff. So it's interesting. As I was listening to you talk about that work, you used the term Black, and you used the term artists of color, people of color. So let's open up Pandora's box.
Let's do it. Let's go. Let me stretch and get some water. I'm ready.
Yeah.
All right.
Get my water bottle here.
So the other night in our teach meeting, we had, as we always do, some really great conversation. And I just, my head has been reeling, and I have been just looking up all kinds of things. And then, like, a good friend of mine in Cincinnati, she posted some articles about exactly what we were talking about. And so I'm now in that headspace. But we were talking a lot about, I guess the best way to put it is it's labels in some way. But and then also, by the way, I watched a documentary about, political correctness and all of that. And so that's all been feeding into all of this. So, we're all trying to figure out and examine what is, I have my best friend and her husband are just like, we're Black people. I'm a Black person. I'm not, don't call me an African American. I'm Black. I'm a Black person. And they've always said that to me for years. And they still feel that way. But then, there's other people that are, there's all these different terms. And so let's talk about that and how we navigate those waters.
Yeah. So I'm going to take you back to baby Jessica and labels. So my parents, one was African American, like African descent. One is he was Native American and German descent, white. Okay, so very mixed race. So baby Jessica is the lightest skin tone of her family. And if you put us all in a row, you would see a color spectrum, even in the 6 members that were my family. So growing up, there was a point around middle school where the switch came, and it was like, whoa, what am I? Am I Black? Am I white? I don't really look like mom, but I have her cheekbones, but I'm not as dark as her. And so that identity crisis that happens in middle school anyways started. And that's when the kids at school, where you're not Black enough, or you are Black, so you don't really do this. And why does she play the violin? She's Black. And why does she do this? So then that question comes. If your family goes out to dinner and the waitress says, is this 1 check or 2? And you're looking around like, how can they not see that we are a family? How can they not see that we look exact? Like, why would they ask if this is 2 checks? So all of these things are happening. And then you go to school and you take a test and you're supposed to circle these bubbles that identify you. And there's nothing on the page that looks like what you think you are, what you know you are. Then your dad sits you down and says, there are going to be people who look like me who are not going to treat you as well as I do. And your mind just goes, but why? And he was preparing me for this world where, as a woman of color, I was going to enter spaces where I had not been before. And I was prepared for a different relationship with people who looked like him because he was my father. And it was not going to be the same every time. So when you're looking at labels and how the world labels in all different situations, where do you even begin? Now, as a biracial woman, my story sounds like some other biracial women, and it sounds nothing like some other biracial women. There might be a biracial woman who only had a relationship with the Black side of her family and may identify more with those traditions. There may be a Black woman or biracial woman who only identifies with the white side or the Hispanic side or the Asian side. So trying to put a label on, you could pull 3 biracial women together and they would not be the same label. So trying to throw a label on an entire community, how do it's not possible. So what the world does is it uses whatever political power is there. It uses whatever new knowledge has been shared with the world, and it creates an appropriate label for that time. And so at the time, BIPOC, BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, People of Color, is the kind of accepted label. It used to be just POC, People of Color. And then with Black Lives Matters, it was like, no, right now, our Black brothers and sisters need a little bit more love. So let's go ahead and add that B and let us know that the world right now needs to focus on the trauma that Black people are enduring. And then Indigenous people were going through, and it was, okay, now we need to really make sure that we talk about our Indigenous brothers and sisters. So now it's BIPOC. So with the anti-Asian hate that occurred recently in Atlanta, do we change the term now because our Asian brothers and sisters are in pain and they need to come to the forefront? So that's kind of where the question is coming from. And, back in the day, African American was the term and Black was the negative term. And then James Brown, I said this in the meeting the other night, James Brown came out with a song that if you look at the lyrics, because you couldn't understand what he was saying, was I'm Black and I'm proud. And then the switch happened and Black was no longer negative. We took back that power. But there are still people who say, don't call me Black, call me African American. Or don't call me African American, I am African descent. So as we are researching the origins of BIPOC, the history of how these terms change, I mean, we could wake up tomorrow and somebody else could say the new term is this. And we would need to research and see how that feels. And there are people who say, yes, BIPOC is the right way to say it. And there are people who say, I don't identify with that. So we're really trying to explore how do we acknowledge the differences and the identities of everyone while still focusing it on non-white, focusing on the issue at hand, and still allow space for people to speak their true identities and how they identify. So that's kind of the conversation we've been having, and we've been doing a lot of research, and the Teach team shares articles daily with each other of, hey guys, check this one out from this perspective. And we're not just looking at one side, we're looking at all the perspectives. And we, in our meeting the other night, we said, we're not ready to make a decision about this term yet. We need to continue researching. We're not there. We're still, our passion is allowing our emotions to take over that research opposed to our logic right now. Let's go back and research. And in 2 weeks when we meet again, let's see if our minds are a little more settled to have this conversation.
Yeah, and I guess around we had a young woman who was a Congolese refugee come into the Girl Project who was stunning. Just sharing her experience, stunning in so many ways. But I guess an incredible lesson I learned of her, she definitely had an accent, and she said so many people will come up to me and be like, "Where are you from?"
Mm-hmm.
And she said, it's not that I'm not proud of where I come from. I think this is what she said. I'm putting, this was a while back, but it's not that I'm not proud of where I come from, but to me, it feels like you're looking for a way to make me other. Like, well, you're not American, so what are you? And it's white and then everybody else. So you're not white, so what are you? Because white is dominant. And it's when people, even with male, female, say, well, you're not an actor, you're an actress. And I'm like, no, I'm a fucking actor. Or is it alumni? And I'm like, can it just be an alum? Like, do we have to, because so I guess all of these terms also are a way of at this point, taking great pride and ownership of we are a majority. It's all very challenging. And I think, like you're saying, the terms change all the time. Yeah. I don't tell people I'm Irish American. So why would I call you African American unless you ask me to call you that, or I ask you? But we don't ask white people, like, what should I call you? Right. Because you're not white. So what should I call you?
Yeah.
We're so broken. We're so mixed up.
Well, and that's the rabbit hole of it when I mentioned the emotion of it, because depending on who you're having those conversations with, you have a relationship with them. And so that comes as okay, I have to fix this for this person, or I have to fix this for this person. And once it gets into that emotional response, you're going to be excluding someone else unawares. And so just really looking at, and I think the way I worded it was, we should be able to replace BIPOC in our mission statement, and our mission statements still have the same meaning. People still understand exactly what we're about, exactly who we're serving, about exactly what we're educating about, regardless of that word, whatever the word is in that title. So it's less about the label and more about what it conveys and the meaning behind it. And the hard thing with the label is, once there's a label on there, it's hard to see past that word and into the meaning. And so we're really doing that work. I think I said replace BIPOC with waffle. Does our mission statement still do what it's supposed to do?
Yeah.
Lots of important conversation around it, and moving forward, I think that there will consistently be shifts. I'm interested in the people of the global majority has always been something that's interested me since, if you remember, Ellie, last year at SETC, Nicole Brewer used that term a lot. And I love that term, not necessarily as any kind of a label. I think that most white people forget who the global majority is.
Right. It's a nice reminder, like, hey, by the way,
don't forget.
We aren't the other, you are.
Right.
Welcome. We'll walk you through this. Don't worry. It'll be okay.
So, Jessica, this time of racial unrest and the pandemic, there's been a lot going on in the world. And I know for you personally, there's been a lot going on in your personal life. And I just, through Facebook, social media, but I really admire your grace and your positivity when being faced with, a great deal of challenges. So, I'm curious what are some of the tools that you use to move through difficult times, tragedies, and how do you take care of yourself?
Yeah, such a good question. You probably heard me stumble when talking about my family, because it's very, very new. We're coming up on the 1-year anniversary of losing my mother. She passed from brain cancer. She battled for 4 long years, and she was the strongest woman I've ever known. And half of who I am would not even be without her influence. And then my dad passed in December, about 8 months after my mother, of a heart attack, very unexpectedly, right before Christmas. And so I have been going through a big transition, another identity crisis, you could say, because I also became a mother in the past year. So becoming a mother and then losing your mother, and then also losing your father in the middle of a pandemic, starting a new job, all of these new experiences. And so the first thing is I have a great group of friends who I feel like I can just bare my soul to. And it's a very select group. And we have a text group that we just check in on each other frequently. And it was just learning to say to them, I need help. Like it's a rough day. I need the help. And so allowing them to help carry that through, that was a big thing. I am an advocate for therapy if you need it, because look, the people who know you sometimes will soften what they say to you because they love you. They will sometimes go around things to not hurt your feelings, or if they don't think you can handle it, you need that outside person who doesn't know you, who you can say, this is what I'm feeling, and they can walk you through that in a true and honest way. So I'm a huge component for, like, if you need therapy, honey, go for it, because that changed everything for me. Just having that person that I can check in with and give me that homework for my self-care. My husband is ridiculously supportive. Anyone who's ever done a show with me knows that he is stage dad to the max, whether it's a high school production or a professional production. buys snacks for the orchestra. He brings dinner for the team. Like, he's always been that person to support my dreams. And he definitely held me together, especially with having a new baby and having to figure out traveling and things like that to take care of arrangements. He was like super dad, fantastic. And just be honest with yourself and give yourself time. I think there's an analogy about grief, that relates grief to a ball, and it's inside a box and there's a button. And so when the tragedy first happens, the ball is really big and it hits that button inside that box over and over and over again. And over time, the ball gets smaller and smaller, but it's still in that box and that button is still there. And sometimes it'll hit that button and you're not ready for it. Sometimes it's coming and there's the button. But just this idea that you're going to heal, but the pain is still going to come through sometimes. Allow yourself to feel it. Find that support team that can support you through it. And sometimes I'll text and just say, guys, the ball is really big today. Like, I need a day to be away. Or it's, a moment of, hey, I have a really good memory that can displace the grief I'm feeling right now, and finding the joy within the memories that you were able to have with those people. And so that's kind of how I navigate it. And I also just recognize that, I have been extremely blessed in my life to have both of my parents for, 35 years, and to have their support and to see them in the audience at every show they could do. They were at the last show that I did, Into the Woods. I didn't even get to conduct that show, but I was there, and we went to closing night together. So both of my parents were at the last show I did, and that's a blessing. So that's how I kind of navigate. It's it's a balancing act. So, and I know, Vanessa, you said on Facebook, I just seem so upbeat. I don't post when I'm on the floor crying. So I just, y'all, I'm an ugly crier, and I'm a little too dramatic in myself. I don't want to. So not everyone is posting when the ball is really big and when that grief is really heavy. But I think by showcasing the joy that you are finding is a really good way to keep yourself going.
Sure. Thank you for sharing that, Jessica.
You're welcome.
So in addition to all of those challenges, as a school administrator in the middle of a pandemic and opening, I want to hear some great things too about the STEM program. Super excited to hear about that. But what were some of the challenges that you have faced as a school administrator and keeping those girls going during this time?
Yeah, definitely. So I think the biggest part of public schooling is the human connection. You learn so much, not just your ELA, your reading, your math, you're learning about the human connection. So in opening a new school during a pandemic, we learned our teachers through the screen. Like, that's hard. The first time I saw one of my teachers, I was like, oh, you're tall, because I'd only met her through a screen.
So wait, when did you open? Can you tell us exactly when you opened?
We opened in August of 2020. Yeah, it was great.
Very new school. And how did you get, so many questions. How did you get the students and the teachers? Were you recruiting before that, or?
Yes. So the students had applied before, because they have to apply for the program. It's a Fayette County public school, but it's on a lottery system. And we have committed to at least 50% of our student body being girls of color, because they are underrepresented in the STEM industry by leaps and bounds. And so we already knew who and we don't say students, we say scholars. So scholars, so I'm going to switch it. So our scholars, we knew who they were going into it. The team was hired before going into it, but all of that was still happening because scholars were not in school in March. They were virtual then. So everything was still happening virtually. And so I had to do a lot of research. There's a book that educators use by a gentleman named Harry Wong, and it's called First Days of School. And it's like this list of all the things you do for the first day of school to prepare your teachers, to teach your students, to basically be able to run a school building. Well, he doesn't have a chapter for a pandemic. And so it was me taking what he did have and going, can't do that, can't do that. Oh, we can do that, but it has to be done this way. So basically, and this is something I always tell my teachers, the curriculum might change, but the standards will always be the same. So our game plan was changing, but the standard was the same. You want to build relationships with your scholars. You want to make sure that they know that they are loved, that you care about their growth, and that you're there for their families. I said, so that's what we have to do. We did virtual open house. We did virtual parent teacher meetings. We do something called PBIS, which is Positive Behavior Intervention Services. And it's basically, instead of saying, no, don't run in the hall, it's thank you for walking and following our expectations in the hallway. And we also reward scholars on a frequent basis for meeting our expectations. And most of that is like being respectful, responsible, and engaged. And so making sure that every scholar could participate in those rewards. One day we did Crazy Hat Day, and we made sure that we mailed home a party hat for every scholar so that they could put a crazy hat on and celebrate meeting the expectations and have those moments. We did a teacher talent show where our teachers recorded their talents, and we watched it on Zoom all together. And we sent home popcorn to the girls in individual bags, and we had popcorn and we had hand clappers so they could participate. So it was more about, our families are struggling too. They're at home with all their kids doing different versions of virtual learning and working from home and worrying about what's next and trying to stay safe. We have to make sure that we are building community first, because the rest will fall in line. But if they don't think we even care about them, who cares what 2 + 2 is? Like that can go away. We need to make sure that these babies know that we are here for them, and that when we can be together, the only thing that's going to change is that we put the screen away and we're together. So that was my focus as the administrative dean, was building community.
Awesome.
Incredible work.
Is the staff as diverse as the student body?
It is, yes. So I think Fayette County totes us as the most diverse staff in the district. And even though we are small, it is very diverse. And, you know, talking about BIPOC, I've actually had that conversation with my teachers. And that is just how diverse we are. And I have one teacher who's of Arab descent, and she was talking about what BIPOC means to her. And then I have a paraeducator who's of Indian descent, talking about what it means to her. And just being able to have those conversations with your teaching staff,
Right.
that's kind of cool. And the beautiful thing is, the teaching staff looks like our scholars.
So great.
Ellie's face, I'm just like, Ellie's like, this is amazing.
Like, why did this take so long? And didn't I just read an article today, you two, that there's an all boys school opening up in the old Douglas school, which SCAPA used to be next to, I think, that school. When it was really small. We were with the, we were at the Bluegrass School. I think it was called the Bluegrass School. Anyway, so I see an all boys program. Is that similar to this STEM program?
Yes, so it's similar and an extension of an already existing program. So Carter G. Woodson Academy is for minority males, middle school and high school, and it is housed at Frederick Douglass High School. So those scholars are in their suits and ties in their classes, and then they come across to the Douglass side to participate in electives. So I had a lot, when I taught there, I had a lot of scholars from Carter G in my choirs, which was like, yes, give me the male voices, this is great.
Yes.
And so this new one is the elementary version of that. So it's the Carter G. Woods Preparatory Academy, and it will be a STEM focus. So it's our brother's school, but also baby brother to the current Carter G. Woodson. And it's going to be housed at Johnson Elementary, which used to hold STEAM Academy, which is
Yes.
and so, yeah, they've just hired their director. She was in our building this week touring, and I've been Facebook stalking her. She's phenomenal. And it's just such a wonderful opportunity. Just thinking about the idea for our school and for the Prep Academy, what happens if you start with kindergarten before people can tell them they can't do it? Like, think about the barriers that are hit before they even get to a point where they want to try a STEM career. Let's get them in kindergarten when we tell them they can do it and that they can do anything, and see how that changes their trajectory.
i.e. the Girl Project Next Generation. We kept saying, oh, we got to go younger than high school. Oh, we got to go younger than middle school. Like, we got to get them before these messages are ingrained.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's more visible than ever that as the world continues to turn, those barriers are being introduced younger and younger. When you talk about trauma from an early age, even if they can't recognize what that trauma was, it is there. The ingraining just starts at such a young age. And so we do a RISE call to action at the beginning of every morning together. And it's meant to erase whatever has happened before they walk through the doors. Like put away whatever may have started your day wrong. It starts with, the day is new, it's beautiful, and so are you. It's time to rise and be the light. It's time to shine because I'm bright. We start every day with that. And then we end every, we call it Rise and Shine, every Rise and Shine group meeting with our pledge, and there are hand signs with it. It's time to rise up to become the empowered women we are destined to be, capable and innovative. We are the leaders of our generation. We will value one another and celebrate our differences. We will listen to other ideas to develop our own understanding. I am not afraid to make mistakes. I will persevere and rise above because there is no limit to what I can do. I am a Rise Phoenix today and every day. I promise to be a change maker and lead the Rise way. Every morning, every single morning.
That's a campfire right there.
Yeah, that's great.
And I'm telling you, seeing that happen live in the classroom for the first time, I'm in tears, just a puddle of tears, because you envision this as a thing that's going to empower them. You don't really get to see it when they were virtual. And the first day I was in a classroom and those girls said, I'm an empowered woman, capable and innovative. I was like, done.
Okay. When this COVID thing is done, I'm coming to visit you.
We have to come visit. Can we just
I need you.
Yes?
Yeah. We'll be your next generation. We got you.
Yes. Oh.
I never wanted to be in public education. My mom was an educator and I was like, I can't do it. I've watched her soul just drain in some really positive ways, but really challenging ways. But that where you're teaching and where you're leading, I would go into public education to be there.
And I'd take you in a heartbeat.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah, it's just about a mind shift and changing the way you look at what you're learning and what it can do for you.
Man,
they are so lucky to have you.
They are.
Oh, thanks.
Oh man,
I love them. They're so cute.
So our time is ticking away, and I just simply cannot move on to the last phase until we talk about the boy, the
Baby
adorable little, I'm sure, just genius child prodigy that's just about to be unleashed.
I mean, he does like to play the piano. I don't know where it came from.
And I feel like he has a team. You were so public about your story on Facebook that I just felt like when Lucas was born, I don't know about any other state, but I feel like Lexington in particular, like the whole city was celebrating because we had this massive investment in success to bring this miracle child into the world. And he came early. It's amazing that I know this story and feel so much investment in it. You know what I mean? Because I'm in a different state. I've been away.
Well, I mean, Steve and I have been married for 8 years. And we struggled with infertility for about 7. So when it's funny that you say I was so public with it. There were about 6 years where no one knew. Like the inner circle didn't even know. Family members didn't even know because I felt it was like such this like heavy, like my body is not doing what it's supposed to do, and it was all of that and something that we just desired to have that we didn't think was going to happen. And so we had been through every test, all the hormones, I had a surgery. I mean, we had been through everything, like lots of debt to try to bring it to pass. And so a friend of mine won a grant from Parental Hope, and she mentioned it to me. And she said, they have a support group. You should join it. It's on Facebook. And so I joined that on Facebook. They were getting ready for their annual event, and they were doing like this, we're going to give away 2 free tickets and, tell us who you would take with you to the event. And I was like, oh, I know how to win this. I would bring my husband, who has supported me every step of the way. Like I knew exactly how to say it. And we won these 2 tickets to go to the event. And then they were like, oh, by the way, it comes with one raffle ticket for a free round of IVF, which is, you know, and so I was like, well, tell me more about this. And they're like, well, you know, you can have people, you build your team and have people buy a raffle ticket on your behalf. And that ups your chances of winning this round of IVF. And so I said, okay, we'll tell our family. So we told just our close family and built the team that way. And then it was like each ticket that was bought, like my hope meter started to fill. It was like, oh, this might, and I was so afraid to hope again, because again, 6 years of hoping and you're like, oh, I don't know if I can take this anymore. And it just kept filling. And I said, Steve, I think I'm ready to like tell more people about what we're going through, because if this is our chance, I would kick myself if my own insecurities kept me from, I said, the worst thing that can happen is people know we're struggling and we move on and we try again. And I said, let's tell our friends. So I told the inner circle of friends, and the little hope meter filled again. I was like, okay. And so then I finally was like, rip the Band-Aid off. Let's just make this public. Let's share our story. And it was like 5 days before the event. So it was not a whole lot of time between, hey guys, we are 1 in 8. We struggle with infertility. We have a chance to see our dreams realized through this means of IVF. Join our team. And so we joined the team. We went to the event. We won one of the raffles for a round of IVF. And then at that point, you're like, okay, there's hope, but it's 33%, you know, effective. We could still go through this whole next phase and not come out with the result we were expecting. So we're trying to, you know, prepare ourselves for this. I was doing a production at Woodland Park and driving to Cincinnati with all these shots and all these doctor's appointments and trying our hardest. I was opening another school. It was insane. And I remember the day they called, because you have to have this 2-week wait after everything. And they're like, don't do anything, just 2 weeks. We'll call you and let you know, you'll do your blood test. And I get this phone call and they're like, all right, Ms. Greene, so, you are pregnant. And I was like, excuse me? And I said, are you sure? It's like, I don't mean to question your professional, you know, but it's been 7 years now. Like, are you sure? And yeah, we got lucky with Lucas. And so we had a completely different name picked out. And just looking at the number of people who rallied behind us, and I always say, you saw me as a mother, but I couldn't see myself as a mother. Like the people who really poured into us and invested. And so I had a friend create an image that had, you know, baby Greene, and the word baby was made out of all the names of the people who bought a raffle ticket, just to talk about how important that investment in that community was, and that we recognize Lucas is a community, like the village made this possible. And yeah, we had a threatened miscarriage along the way with Lucas, and I was on bed rest for quite some time that I wasn't public about. And then Lucas came 10 weeks early. It was opening night of Into the Woods, and the doctors were worried that I was not gaining weight. The only time I've been really upset to not gain weight. So we stopped by the hospital for a quick ultrasound on the way to the production of the opening night of Into the Woods. I was in my opening night dress, and they said, your blood pressure is entirely too high. We cannot let you leave the hospital. And I said, but I have an orchestra waiting for me. Like, there's a show that's about to happen. And the doctor said, I wouldn't say this if it wasn't serious. I said, all right, let's do it. And so I had booked an assistant music director who had been rehearsing with me every step of the way and was prepared to take over at any moment, because, again, my mother was ill and I just wanted to be prepared for anything that I needed to do. And so they put me in the wheelchair, and I called the assistant music director and I said, happy opening night. I need you to conduct tonight. And he said, are you serious? I said, yeah. I said, they're going to do a 24-hour hold to see if everything's okay. So I said, I can't conduct tonight. He was like, well, what if I miss a cue? I said, well, you can't. And this is what you rehearsed for. Right. I said, so you just look at that orchestra and you say, I got you, and that orchestra will carry you. And he was like, okay, we got this. And then I called Wes and I said, because I had already texted Wes, like, I'm going to be late with the cast dinner because the doctor's taking a little longer. And so I called Wes and I was like, all right, you got this. Tell me how it goes. And as soon as I hung up with Wes, that's when I started crying. I was like, let me just get the show taken care of. And Lucas almost came that night, and they did everything they could to keep him cooking a little longer. He cooked for 4 more days, and then we had an emergency C-section on that Monday. And Lucas came into the world and spent 5 weeks in the NICU. And we went home the day they started shutting everything down for COVID, where they were like, okay, it's only going to be one parent allowed in at a time from now on, and you have to do it. And we just got home and shut our little bubble and let him, get healthy and big, and he just keeps surprising us. It's kind of like what I said about looking at our scholars. What happens if people don't tell you can't? And Steve says all the time, no one told Lucas he wasn't supposed to be doing these things. So he's just growing and doing what a baby is supposed to do. He doesn't know he was a preemie. So yeah, that's our little light. Lucas means bringer of light.
And some of those songs, if you go follow Jessica Greene at Arts Integrated You, her singing to that baby, oh man.
Thank you, Ellie.
It's so beautiful. I watched everyone and cried. Kind of wanted to go to sleep with Lucas on Mama.
Like, okay, it's time for bed now. Yeah, but he's a joy. We love him.
Jessica, I'm going to ask some super challenging questions now.
Okay.
What is your superpower?
Okay, I was literally just talking about this yesterday. My superpower is hearing what people say even when they don't say it.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
The body language, the look to the left, the whatever that is that lets you know, is their heart really in it? Is this really what they feel? Or do we need to dig a little deeper? That's the hearing what people say even when they don't say it.
That is a Gemini quality too. It is.
You know what? I think so.
What's the greatest piece of advice you've ever been given?
Oh, okay. It's like the same thing, but not. So my dad always says we can do hard things. So when you get into a mix where you're like, okay, this is really difficult, but you can do hard things. You might need a little extra help, but you can do it. And then he also said, live the good life. So if you're walking around thinking, I really want that pedicure, but I probably shouldn't. If it's part of your good life, girl, get that pedicure. Boy, get that pedicure and enjoy the good life, because those moments of taking care of yourself, or even if it feels like an indulgence, you've got to live the good life. And my sister posted about this today, everyone's good life looks differently. Find out what your good life is and live it.
And what that teacher said to you goes along with that too, right? If it's hard, you're probably on the right track. Is that what they said?
Yes, if it scares you, it's probably the right choice. Don't always choose the easy things.
What are you reading right now that is helping, or working on that is kind of bettering yourself?
I am reading the ending, finally, of Becoming Michelle Obama. I did not get to finish it this summer when I started it. And so I picked that up last week to finish. And just there's an eloquence in the writing, in the sharing of the story, and how she was able to make that path for herself and for her family. And just her storytelling is just so intriguing to me. And I'm really enjoying that.
That's on my list.
It's good.
Oh, I need to read it.
It's really good.
Have you watched the show about it?
I did.
Oh, yeah.
I know. I was like, I was supposed to finish the book first.
I know.
I was like, it's on Netflix now. Yeah, I totally watched it. And I mean, spoiler alert, the story about when marriage equality was announced and how she took her girls out of the White House. We are going out to celebrate with the people. Like that tenacity of, they need to see this and they need to be a part of it. They need to feel it. Like just being in the moments was really, really inspiring.
Yes.
If you could have billboards on the highways of our country, what would they say?
Oh, they would say, eat the cake. And they would be purple and the lettering would be in glitter. It would just be it would be quirky things like that. Like all of those doubts we put in ourselves to limit our happiness, that we probably don't feel about, like, we don't really feel them, but they're said to us, like, eat the cake, get the pedicure, do the things, like, it would be like encouraging things like that that made you wonder, what else was I limiting myself of happiness because of somebody else's whatever. Yeah. Eat the
I
cake.
love that.
I'm going to get cake.
Kind of making me want cake. I don't know.
I know.
Yeah.
Well, Jessica, we're going to move into our campfire section. For our ampers, our campfire is a moment for our guests to share inspiration with our listeners and us. The campfire represents storytelling in an intimate setting that is unique to the people who are present. In our activism work, we refer to this as the close container or circling. So, what are you sharing today, Jessica?
So my newest kind of encouragement and mantra to keep me moving forward has been Maya Angelou's Still I Rise, which, you know, as a child, I learned it and quoted it all the time. And it was like what you did. And so this past year, after everything that has transpired, the words kind of jumped off the page for me in a different way. And the stanza that really spoke to me was, just like moons and like suns, with the certainty of tides, just like hopes springing high, still I'll rise. And it's one of the only times in that poem that the contraction I'll is used. Usually it's still I rise, still I rise. And so it's a very subtle way of saying, you know, it's not always going to be easy, but you will rise. So that's what it spoke to me in a different way. But also like the things that are consistent in the world. You know, the moon will rise, the sun will rise, the tides will come in and go out. Finding the things in your life that are consistent, so that when things kind of get turned upside down, you can relate to those. You know, if you're having an anxiety attack, sometimes grounding yourself by saying, you know, touch two things that what are two things you can smell, like finding the things that ground you. So when you're going through hard times, finding the things that are consistent, you know, even if it's just the sun will rise in the morning and I will rise, thinking about how you can persevere and you can rise above those things that are tough. And then the fact that that stanza has the word hope, that has been the thing through the pandemic, that I have really trusted. And there's sometimes there are people like, oh, you're just so positive all the time. It feels fake. It's like you don't acknowledge the bad things. Hope is the acknowledgement that things are not right at that moment, but belief that it will get better. So hope is not necessarily always, you know, sunshines and roses. It's making yourself believe that it will get better. It's okay to hope. It's okay to hope and to find a positive and to allow that to push you through until the hope is real.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you
You're
for
welcome.
sharing that with us. So inspiring. Ellie, I think it's your turn.
Yeah, that totally makes me think like hope is the antidote, right? Like to all this, it is the thing that won't let other things win. That's gorgeous. I'm going to take you into the rapid response questions. You've
Okay.
made it. You're famous. James Lipton, rapid response. Are you ready?
Ready.
And they don't really have to be that fast. We just
Okay.
try to make it important that way. Okay.
I love it. I love it so much.
You're my favorite. If you could choose any other profession, what would it be?
Oh, man. Oh, wow. I would want to be, I think like a social media liaison. I would just want to spend all day on social media, like promoting somebody or something.
Ooh,
Oh,
that's awesome. If you could have any superpower besides the one you do have, which is reading things that aren't being said, which superpower would you choose?
Oh, man. I think it would be never getting tired. I just want to do all the things, but I do enjoy a nap. I really do. I don't know. Okay, maybe the quicker naps. That's it. Yeah, because I like my naps.
You could be a vampire that never leaves. Okay, so if you were to have one disclaimer, what would it be?
Facial expressions are not always reflective of my mindset. Sometimes my face says things that I don't mean. And I have to like reel it in.
I think people always look at me, they're like, are you confused? I'm like, no, I'm just thinking, why?
No, this is just my face.
Oh, believe me, I feel you. I'm like, no, I'm not mad at you.
Right. I'm just so direct that sometimes people are like, oh. I'm like, oh, that was the answer. I don't know what you want me to do.
You wanted the answer, right?
Right.
What is your spirit animal?
Ooh, butterfly.
Oh, I love that.
The biggest representation of change.
Love that.
Mm-hmm. What do you want people to say about you after you're gone?
That she cared about everyone. Genuinely.
What's your guilty pleasure?
Real Housewives of Atlanta.
Oh, no. Oh, just
Love it.
shame. I'm just kidding.
Every Sunday night.
You and Lucas watching Real.
Now he's asleep. He's gone. Steve knows. Don't bother. Just it's her. I call it my guilty pleasure like night.
That's
Oh man, that's funny. What's your favorite taste?
Ooh, I think my favorite taste is ice cream.
Oh yes.
cake and ice cream. Like, I'm so hungry right now.
This doesn't go with my cleanse.
It doesn't.
What's your favorite sound?
My favorite sound is humming, because usually if somebody is humming, they are like completely relaxed and like in a really good place. And usually what they're humming is something that makes them happy or reflective. So if somebody is humming, I'm like, they're in a good place right now.
And then one last question. Who is your most significant mentor?
Ooh, her name is Dr. Kathy Bullock, Berea College professor of music, and she took me on as her daughter when I started at Berea, and looked at my parents and said, she's going to be okay, and allowed them to release me to learn and travel the world and do the things. And she is still my mentor today. She would not allow me to miss class, even if I had the 6 days and the syllabus available. And she reminded me, you can't miss. You don't get to do what everyone else does. You have to set the standard, and people are watching you. And she just reminded me that constantly and continued to push me, even to this day. She's amazing.
You're amazing. I think I'm your biggest fangirl after today. This has been so inspirational. And I know you, but I don't know you, right? It's the same circles when I'm in Lexington, and I know Vanessa's gotten to know you so much more. I'm just Lexington.
Well, when you're done with your cleanse, we'll go for cake and ice cream. We'll talk. Vanessa and I will go for cake and ice cream now. Yep. When you're done with your cleanse, join us.
Oh, I'm not really cleansing.
Okay, good. We can all go for cake and ice cream.
Sweet.
Jessica, thank you for sharing your stories and being vulnerable with us, and providing a great deal of inspiration.
You're so welcome.
You know, I appreciate I appreciate what you're doing in so many ways for the Lexington community with your work as an educator and an artist. And we're really grateful that you share yourself so well.
Thank you. Thank you for finding me worthy to share. I think I told Vanessa, I said, if my honesty can help just one person, then I've done my part. You got to do your part in this world. So I will always be an open book for y'all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And that's a wrap. Thank you, listeners, and our guest for sharing the space with us. If you don't want to miss our next episode and you'd like to follow our work, you can find us on Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter at Voices Amped. Voices Amped is part of our arts activism initiative, Voices Amplified. Our team is me, Jenny Benavides, Vanessa Becker-Weig, Ellie Clark, Dr. Margaret McGladry, and our intern and editor, Kennedy Johnson. If you have any questions that you'd like to hear from future guests, or if you ever have questions for us, hit us up on social media or email us on our website, voicesamplified.net. We'd love to hear from you. And remember, you can watch all of our interviews on YouTube if you search and subscribe to Voices Amplified. We'd like to thank Lauren Rourke for our podcast art, Tiffany DuPont Novak for our logo design, and Vanessa Davis for her beautiful underscore, I'm Doing Okay. You can follow her music at Songwriter Vanessa. We'll see you next time, everyone.
Voices Amped is generously sponsored by the Kentucky Foundation for Women. For more information about our guests, podcast content, or if you want to learn more about Voices Amplified, follow our advocacy work or support our 2021 Independence Campaign. You can visit our website voicesamplified.net or visit us on Facebook or Instagram. And remember, be curious, be courageous, take up space, and make some noise.